Hello, everybody. So this is Teaching Robots Arabic. My name is Nizar Habash. I'm a computer science professor at New York University Abu Dhabi. This is my first time doing a lecture this type for this kind of audience. So I hope I try to make it fit what I imagine somebody who's interested in literature and literary background and who's worried about AI today would be interested in hearing about, but also relating it to Arabic. So the title is a little bit deceptive. It sounds like I'm going to have a robot with me talking with me. It's really more about Arabic and AI today. And I thought we should start probably by talking about what is AI exactly, what are we talking about here. Then I'll talk about how we deal with Arabic from the point of view of the machines. And then I'm going to give you some examples of some of the projects that are going on these days to kind of show you how I connect all of these ideas together so you see where we're going with it. So lots of terms that are used, that are flown around, like artificial intelligence, natural language processing, human language technologies. From your computational linguistics, from your point of view, these are already all the same. It's really variations with slight different sense differences that are not really that important. But all of them you already use and have every day. I mean, if you use Google search, if you've used machine translation, if you've used automatic spelling correction, like if you use Grammarly, or text prediction when you're now texting, it just fills the rest of your sentence for you. All of these are basically natural language processing or artificial intelligence for language. So we often think of the problem from most people's common kind of way of using it as an application. So I want to translate. I go to a translator in the past. Now I can go to a machine to do this. I want to have this text corrected. I need, an editor. Now I have a machine that can do this for me. But people who are actually working in the field don't just think at that level, the level of application, but we also think of the level of enabling technologies. These are kind of lower level things. And the reason I want to tell you about it, even though you'll never have to interact with it, is that when you start seeing weird behavior in the future or now, you kind of get a sense of like, I see why this happened, or I can imagine why this happened. I think it would kind of break the ice between you and the AI, get you to understand its failures. We're already trying to think of it as a human being. Now you get to see it as a human being with faults, right? More complete in a sense. And so some of the things I mentioned already among applications, like I'm not going to repeat them, but in terms of enabling technology, we're looking at things like if I have a word and I need to break it up into smaller pieces so I could understand its components, let's say in an educational setting, the kind of technology I need to do that is different from those applications. For example, just to give you a taste of the Arabic complexity, this word for the Arabic reader is a single word written together, and it would have multiple different components in it that would translate into the English, and they will write it. وَسَيَكْتُبُونَهَا would be written as a single word in Arabic. So one of the problems we deal with is how do I chop this in a proper way before I actually train the models on it. Now, the techniques that are used, and this is also another kind of important concept, sometimes there are basic heuristics, rules, that somebody would write and say, I want the following rule to do the following thing with the text. But more often than not, today particularly, and the great advances that we're seeing are coming from what's called machine learning approaches. And these approaches, we don't actually tell the machine the rules. We just give it lots of examples. When I say lots, like billions of words, it would take a human being, 1,000 years to read the amount of text that ChatGPT was trained on, for example, right? Just to be able to have access to that information. ChatGPT did it in a much shorter time, but it doesn't, it's basically learning sequences of words, symbols appearing next to each other, and trying to infer a meaning for them so that it can complete the sentence when you ask it a question later on. And this is kind of part of the problem that happens often where we see biases or weird behavior. It's relying on all of those examples that it saw before. And the solutions have been, interestingly, these rule-based approaches nowadays where, remember of those of you who may have tried ChatGPT when it came out, and you could ask questions and get answers for them, which now you cannot anymore. Somebody went in, put a rule that basically says, if there's a keyword, this kind or that kind or that kind, like, don't answer. Say it's unethical for me to answer this question. I am only a machine, blah, blah, blah. So we're seeing, even though those techniques the heuristics are old-fashioned today in terms of research, they're actually still powerful because they give us a bit of control. So if anybody tells you, well, I cannot control it, it's what it's trained on, it's not exactly completely true. There are ways of putting railguards on all AI technologies today to basically guide them in different directions, in the direction you want them to take. So, and when we talk about data, just one other component here is more data, the more data, the better. There are two ways of thinking of how we teach machines. One of them is what's called unsupervised learning, or you just give it buckets and buckets of data, and you let it figure out, can I predict a word? They actually literally play a game of fill in the blanks with themselves. It's actually by design. So 15% of the words are removed, and the system has to develop a meaning of the word where it can get the word it removed correctly. So when the system is training in ChatGPT, GPT models, they're just playing fill in the blanks on millions and millions and millions and millions of sentences to develop a good sense of how to predict the next word, which is like thinking of it as the next word is a blank, what do I put in it? But there's another kind that wouldn't work this way, and that's a task that's called supervised machine learning, where you give an example of the input and example of the output, right? You cannot play fill in the blank to translate from Arabic to French. You need to see examples of Arabic and examples of French to learn how to go from one to the other, right? So it's not the same kind of technique for learning. And for doing that, what we need is what we call parallel data. Useful word. Parallel data is data that has one example and then the example in the other language or the target that you want to take it to. So for example, corpora that are in paired languages, the most famous one is the United Nations corpus, 6 official languages of the UN. All of the sentences in them are written in parallel, translated by human beings, of course, right? And then the machine is using all of that parallelism to basically learn how to translate new sentences. Now, if you think about it for a second, such a model would be very good at translating UN-type text, but the moment you give it poetry, it's going to fail, or it's going to produce something that sounds legalistic and dry, potentially, right? So it's very important that, before we get to the baby, it's very important to think of the genre, the type of text that you're working with when we're thinking of what we're training a model. Some degree, it's similar to kind of what we do with human children. I mean, except that, of course, babies come naturally with the ability, predisposed to basically be able to learn language, with machines, they're not like that. We have to write the algorithms that go over the data. So we have to fill everything basically in between to be able to do this. But just like human babies, if you use a lot of bad language around your child, guess what he's going to say or she's going to say when they go to school. If you use different kind of language, they'll use that other kind of language. Same things with machines. If you give them a lot of data that is biased and problematic, it's going to learn to do the same thing. It's really just copying the behavior of what we're training it on. I think it was said yesterday in the talk in the conversation with Professor Toby Walsh, that at some level, AI is a mirror of ourselves. I would say it's a mirror of ourselves with all of the, discrepancies of power that we have. Cultures, languages that actually have more resources that they can create more data. Those data would be fed into the machines at a higher proportion than the cultures and the languages that don't have that kind of data, right? It's not about superiority of culture in its essence, but rather its position of power, basically, in the world, and that it was able to do this more and more. This is the same, and in some level, I think we kind of, it's similar like the experience of learning anything, really. So yeah, more data is better, but domain and genre sensitivity is very important. By the way, for all of those of you taking pictures, you're welcome to. I actually have a QR code at the end. You can download the whole slides. So I'll leave it at the end during questions, and you can download everything. No, don't stress. And then quality, garbage in, garbage out. That was famously one of the early chatbots that Microsoft had created at one point that was supposed to kind of engage people. I think it was called Sai. And they shut it down within 24 hours or so because it turned into a Nazi maniac who was basically cursing at everybody. Again, people talked, if you're learning from the internet, guess what you're gonna get? Something that looks like the internet. So now I say all of this just to give you a sense of AI, some of its complexities, and then we're gonna talk next about some of the problems with Arabic, since this is kind of maybe different. How many people in the room actually can read or speak Arabic? Okay, so about half and half. So I'll do my best to kind of do the intro for everybody for new things that you might see. This is the list that I'm going to go through, actually, of some of the problems that we have. There's no point in talking about them out of context. So Arabic, just if you wonder, Arabic is written from right to left. I think everybody should know this by now. And it's written from letters that are disconnected. When they're connected with each other, they change shape. So this is kind of basically what happens with Arabic. This is annoying. Many Arabs suffer when we travel. You're always seeing Arabic split up like this or written backwards, or they do horrible things to the language, I don't know. But my point, and of course Arabic alphabet is much, much bigger than the set that we're actually using in the Arabic language. This green portion is the part that is used in standard Arabic, but Arabic, of course, as a script is used with many, many other languages. Same with the Latin script, right? Used with many, many different languages. This actually is not a problem anymore. It used to be a problem some 25, 30 years ago when we were training machines. This is not a problem anymore, except for people working on what's called optical character recognition. So if you have text that's an image and you want to turn it into something searchable, that's a problem. But for most, for all intents and purposes, this is really not a problem anymore for us. But I just wanted to, people ask about it. Now, the problem when you're trying to learn, now remember we talked about AI, shoveling in lots and lots of data, but what exactly is this data that we're giving to the machine? I'll give you this problem, which you may not have with other European languages in the same way, and it's called orthographic ambiguity. So Arabic is written with diacritical marks. So these are little, these slashes and dots that appear on top of the word. So this word here could appear in 3 different forms. There's actually several others for this. So I cannot pronounce the word in essence without the diacritics, because the moment I pronounce it, I'm picking a meaning, exactly one specific meaning. So in here, for the ears of people who don't read Arabic, this would be وَلِعِينَ وَلِعَيْنٍ وَلَعِينٌ, right? It sounds like very different, right? But it's written in one way. And those short vowels and marks that sometimes are syntactic, morphosyntactic, basically are elided when we write. So in newspapers, it's about 1.5% of the words have some diacritical marks. They're not even diacritized fully, and sometimes on the wrong letter, by the way. They just put a mark there saying, go to the passive voice of the verb, don't go with the active, go with the kutiba, not kataba, and you just like, good luck, you know, continue with your way. Arabs manage to do it very well. Educated readers have no problem with this issue. Of course, people who are learners and children have trouble with it. For completeness of the context, religious text like the Quran is always written with diacritizations, because could even argue historically the system was developed to protect the Quran from being mispronounced or misread. And these things are quite important. They can change the subject and the object, by the way. So you could flip the meaning of the sentence completely if you want with this. Now, with these, every word would have about 7 different readings on average, right? And you know, many Arabs think, like, there's no way. No, we have tools. If you go online, put the word, and you get all these different possible readings. It's sometimes quite surprising, the different possibilities. Like this example, for example, which goes from infatuated for an eye and cursed, right? The fact that they're so different is actually good, by the way, because in context, you would know it could not mean for the spring. Clearly, it's about them being cursed or something like this. Come on, right? So, but many readers sometimes get stumped and are like, what exactly did they mean here? Which one is it? Now, another problem is what's called morphological richness. This is different. This is the idea that you may have for a particular word. When we say a word, or when I say, here's 1,000 words, it could mean lots of things. Actually, in your own experience, even in English, you know, when you say, I'm going to write an article or that is 1,500 words, you don't mean different 1,500 words. And you don't mean 1,500 dictionary entries, right? They're just flowing text. Here we're talking actually about the part that's basically the different forms of the word. For example, the English word go would have go, goes, gone, going, and went, right? English typically have 5, 6 forms for a verb. Arabic has about 5,400, right? Now, how did we get to that number? Because you have all these different particles that attach to the word, different gender, number, tense. It's all kind of embedded. If you've studied Latin or French or Spanish, it's similar to a degree. Arabic pushes it one more level because we also have like the conjunction and or the, so that get attached, and also pronouns at the end of the word. Like for example, this one, وَسَنَقُولُهَا is and we will say it. All of it as a single word, right? Now, put this problem with the previous problem, complex, and we drop the vowels, and what do you get? Big mess for the machine. The humans manage, but for the machine it becomes, some of these particles that are attached could actually be ambiguous. It could be part of the word or not part of the word. So it adds to the level of ambiguity. Why am I talking about this again too, is because I talked about teaching the machines by giving them lots and lots of examples. Do I really need to see every single example of all these different forms to be able to predict them next, right? If I did that, that's really problematic. It's very hard. There's millions and millions and millions of basic different forms. And that's where some of these technologies of splitting and chopping the words ahead of time and trying to figure out ways to correct them and fuse them together in languages like Arabic become important. Then my favorite problem of them all, dialectal variations. Every language in the world has dialect. Dialects are natural part of living languages. A language without dialects today is a dead language, effectively. I mean, you know, it has to have variations on it. And in Arabic, however, we have the situation, not completely peculiar, but to a degree, of multiple forms of Arabic kind of coexisting together. So you have the classical Arabic that's daily being used as part of prayers, for example, if you're Muslim. Actually, you see Christian Arabs, some of them pray in Arabic, and you know, God for Christian Arabs is Allah, also, same name, it's the same concept. But also you have modern standard Arabic, which is the official language of the news. You watch TV channels, typically the news is read, and most of the literature in this festival is written in modern standard Arabic, the vast majority of it, that is Arabic, of course. And then you have dialectal Arabic, which is the language people speak on the streets and their daily life. So it's kind of the funny thing, if you think of a typical Arabic man, a Muslim Arab man would pray in classical Arabic, read the news in standard Arabic, talk to his wife in the dialect, watch TV and music, probably from another dialect, you know, if you're Egyptian and you love Fairuz or the other way around, you know. So you have all of these different forms coexisting. How do we take this to the machine? How do we talk about shoveling all these amounts of data? When people say Arabic doesn't have a lot of data, they're usually thinking of standard Arabic. That's what they're thinking of. A classical Arabic, well, nobody is producing it at the same level. The Quran is a completed text. There is no more Qurans. So you're not going to produce any more text of the kind, right? But the dialect is actually where all the action is today in terms of this kind of broad definition of what Arabic is. And there's lots of views and theories. Is this diglossic? Is the term, how do you manage the relationship between these different forms? Is it really one system with one monster with many heads, whatever you want to think about it? And that turns a little bit political at times. I know there are lots of writers who are exploring writing in the dialects, and that's great for certain audiences. Standard Arabic today was considered the default norm, basically, when you are communicating as a writer. But from the point of view of working with machines, when people ask questions, they may ask them in the dialect. They may not ask them in the standard. And then sometimes you think, should I answer in the dialect or should I ask in the standard? Should I answer not thinking of that question of how, but rather what is my goal, which is communicating to my user. If a person cannot read standard Arabic well, an Arab, let's say, from some part of the Arab world where they're not as literate, am I serving them by giving them an answer in a form that is distant from them, right? You have to think about the application of it. You can't really take the attitude, oh, that's their problem. They study Arabic before they can use the internet. I mean, that seems unfair in many ways. Now, some of the differences, just for your amusement, particularly for the Arabs, actually, you may like this. Often people talk about the complexity of the standard is higher than the complexity of the dialect. And they usually think of examples like this. This is the word book, kitab, appears in one form, but there's about 6 basic different forms of it in the standard, depending on its position and the meaning. So kitabu, kitaba, kitabin, kitabun, etc. In the dialects, pretty much, I don't believe any single Arabic dialect has the case system anymore. So this is all gone. This is often compared to Latin, going to any of the Romance languages. Latin had a complex case system. Almost none of its children, French, Italian, have a case system anymore. At the same time, there are some things that actually become more complex. So it's not true that complexity is of the higher level language. There's other kind of complexities. For example, this single word at the bottom here, وَمَا كَتَبْتُ هَلُوش, is an Egyptian word. It means, and I did not write it for his benefit, or for I did not write it for his benefit, right? And it's, or for them, for him, and it's 3 words in Standard Arabic. You cannot write it as a single word in Standard Arabic. So if people think complexity means elegance and superiority, here's an example that flips it upside down. Not necessary, right? Think of another reason, but it's not that. There's also lexical variations. So the differences, tomato, we talk about, tomato, British and American, and Arabs laugh at you when you talk about it. We have about a dozen different ways to say tomato and tomato. And some of these, for example, sorry, I should have put in the phonology for those who don't speak. So even words like banadora, which is used in the Levant, is banadora or bandura or bandora. There's lots of variations. You get uta and guta, tamat, tamata, tamatish, matisha. Matisha, by the way, is tomatisha, and they cut the first half of the word. So tomatisha becomes matisha, right? So you have all these different forms. At the same time, yeah, exactly. This word could actually mean, pronounced the same way, barad, and it could mean a kettle where you heat things, or a fridge where you make things cold. So cold or hot, And of course, the actor Brad Pitt, when you write his name in Arabic and you drop all the vowels, sounds like barad bait, which means a fridge for the house, or a kettle for the house. This is real, but you search on Google for Barad Lil Bayt and you get Brad Pitt, right? And the machine is trying to figure out through its game of fill in the blank, which Barad is it? Maybe that actually is easy. If a word has many different meanings, you could win more often because the ambiguity is on your side in that sense, right? Now, and one last thing I'll say is, on top of everything, there's a high degree of spelling errors. Now this is, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about Arabs writing, but probably everybody in the room who's a writer has OCD about spelling Arabic. And you walk around the city and you're like, where's the Hamza? Or why did they put a Hamza there? We actually did a project. I was the PI on a project called Qalb many years back. We annotated about 2 million words. 1 million came from Al Jazeera comments that were intended to be written in Standard Arabic, and we manually corrected them. We have a team of people who go, and the data is public, by the way. Like, it's used for competitions and for evaluation, spelling correction. 30% of the words have mistakes in them. 30%. It's a really high number. And here are some examples. I mean, that I don't need to explain this, but there are lots of weird examples of people spelling things in very odd ways. Now, in the dialect, you say, what about dialect spelling? Well, there is officially no standard. The Arab academies do not recognize the dialects as worthy of having a standard. So there is no books that tell you how to properly write Egyptian or properly write Levantine. And as a result, you have this weirdness. You cannot say a word is misspelled. There's no standard, right? According to whom, right? But also, you get lots and lots of different variations. This, another Egyptian word, is Mabi'ulhash, which means he did not say it. By the way, I'm Palestinian, but I love Egyptian Arabic. I worked on it for many, many years, and it has elegance to it in a way that a lot of people don't appreciate, actually. But we found 27 different ways of spelling it online, right? Of course, some of them appear a lot more than other. The top one appears 26,000 times. Next one is 13,000 times. So you could say, okay, just go with the top two. And that's actually kind of effectively what we do. We try to normalize and clean up the rest of them. But again, from the machine point of view, not knowing anything about this variety that exists, we're shoveling all of this information. And even when we say, for language A that has more kind of a standard spelling, language B has a messy spelling, the same amount of data is not going to take you to the same distance because you're putting in a lot of extra noise in your models. All right, so that was my story of all of the kind of problems and what AI is. I'm going to tell you now about some of this stuff. There's a little bit of bragging about some of the work that I've been doing in my lab. So sorry for kind of, advertising maybe in this way. But so we have a lab at New York University Abu Dhabi called CAML Lab, Computational Approaches to Modeling Language. We're almost 10 years old now. And basically, when I came to the region about 10 years ago to work at NYU, I had decided I want to kind of start working on more like Arabic-centric AI. I wanted to make Arabic the center of the focus. Whereas in the past, for example, when I lived in the US, I worked at Columbia University for almost 9 years before that. A lot of the work that was happening in the US was interested in Arabic as an input for English audience, right? So a lot of funding went into translating Arabic to English. You didn't care so much about generating Arabic. You're interested in understanding, what are they saying? The only company that actually gave us funding at the time to work in the other direction was Google, because Google was actually interested in translating in both directions, and we had a couple of PhD students who worked on projects for Arabic. Just for all of those who are wondering, as a university, American university, everything we do is public, is open. We cannot do work for hire. So all of this research, the resources are basically made for use for everybody. And that's kind of how I found my ethical kind of grounding in this world, because obviously this can turn very political, of like, why are you doing this? Who's benefiting? It's always a problem all of us computer scientists and AI technologists have. Okay, and of course I couldn't do this work without a fantastic team. This is only a small portion of the people that are in the lab. Everybody actually here speaks Arabic. Even the Japanese guy and the American guy have a degree in Arabic before. So we always had a very kind of international group basically working. And the people in the team came from many different Arab countries to work on it. Our kind of jewel is what's called Camel Tools. This is probably the least interesting for you because it's something interesting for people who do computer science. But if you work with people who are developing websites for you or something like this, and you need some information about the technology, just say, check out Camel Tools. They should be able, as programmers, to figure out what to do with it. I'm going to talk about the application now from your point of view, more like. So one is this tool Camelira. So this is the demo where you can actually put in the text and it will give you the full diacritization of the text automatically. So this problem of figuring out in context, how do I actually read this word, how do I pronounce it, that's all basically done automatically for us now. And to develop this, the tool, and this is actually available on your phone. You can, I think I should have, yeah, I have the QR code here if you want to. And as I mentioned earlier, the slides will all be available after, so don't worry about it if you don't get it. But so we give the analysis of the word, word by word in context, their diacritical marks, and also for every word, it will tell you, what is its part of speech, its gender, number, person, all of the details, and also what is basically the dictionary entry that goes with it. So you can see this could be very useful when you are working with text that, let's say, you're targeting a certain audience, or you want to easily diacritize the text and you don't know how to do it yourself. You can use these tools to help you do this kind of work. And people, of course, who are learning Arabic, for them this is also very useful. Camelira also works on dialects. So we have a system that works on Gulf Arabic and a system that works on Egyptian Arabic. And I just want to kind of point examples like this word here, ما شفتهاش, I didn't see it. We analyze it into different components. We give it almost like a syntactic analysis, a morphosyntactic analysis of what the word is. Camelira has an interface that is fully Arabic, and it actually looks like you're reading Arab in modern ways, basically. So I'm happy to talk with whoever wants to talk about this afterwards, too. Madar was another project. I'm just giving you kind of like the little sense of how going from what AI needs, what the problems are, what kind of solutions people are developing for this. So this was a project that actually, for the first time, created data in parallel from 25 cities. So you have the sentence, and you say, how do they say this sentence in Rabat? How do they say it in Tunis? How do they say it in Doha? How do they say it in Muscat? How do they say it in Beirut? How do they say it in Jerusalem? And you have the parallelism across all of them, right? We didn't have anything like this before to basically work with. Now we have it. We've used it to run international competitions on predicting the next dialect. So now AI can predict your dialect, and based on that can decide what kind of information to give you based on your region, etc. Could be like an invasion of your privacy, I suppose, but it was interesting potentially when you actually want to make it work for you. We can talk about the ethics of all of this, of course, too. Gumar is something that I'm very passionate about. I want to just mention, particularly for this kind of audience. When I started working in the region, I wanted to work on Gulf Arabic. I had not worked on Gulf Arabic before. And I looked and looked and looked for data, and certain places had data, but they wanted lots of money for us to use it, which just made it impossible to do research. Eventually, we found a beautiful treasure trove, about 100 million words, text, almost 1,200 novels of a genre that's called internet novels, or riwayat al-net, spelled in Arabic. And these are mostly written by women. We actually don't know who writes them, by the way. Definitely not AI, because they're quite old. They're about 10 years old or older. The AI was not good enough in those days. So we know it's humans. We know from the fake name they use, we guess they're women. The stories are mostly of romance and cultural kind of reflection and criticism. Some of them are very bold, I would say, even. It's really interesting. 36% of them are Saudi, about 9% Emirati. So it's like from this region. I've actually seen even work done that says this is a Jordanian internet novel in the genre of Gulf internet novel. So Gulf internet novel is a genre in essence, right? Huge space. We have an interface that allows linguists to go and study Gulf Arabic by looking for words and seeing examples of the sentences. We respect all the authors by basically linking to their novels and names, although all their names, as I mentioned, are fake names. Like, you'd say, the daughter of Dubai, the one with the broken heart. There's not a single name that tells you to go to a person. This was a drama with the lawyers from NYU. You cannot post the data. You need a permission license from the author. I'm like, I cannot find the daughter of her father. That's Bint Abuha. One of them was called Bint Abuha, the daughter of her father. Where am I going to find her in Dubai? How would I know that a person who claims that she is Bint Abuha is actually Bint? Well, anyways. One of the things we also developed as part of solving the problem of the variation to spelling is a standard to spell the dialect, right? And actually applied it. So the idea is not impossible. It could be done. There's a standard to actually do this. Just quickly going through some things. I know I'm getting the signal that I need to wrap it up, but we've also worked on syntax and syntactic analysis so you can figure out the structure of sentences. We created for the first time a tree bank, it's called, of analyses that go all the way from al-mu'allaqat, the hanging odes from pre-Islamic Arabic poetry, all the way to modern social media. I joke in Arabic, min jahiliya ila jahiliya, so from a period of ignorance to another period of ignorance. And you get analyses like this. You'll have the slides, you can enjoy looking at them, but it gives you basically a way of syntactically structuring the sentencing. This is the verb, this is the subject of that verb, this is a modifier of that subject, etc. Another project we've developed here with funding from NYU was on readability levels and about basically how do you simplify literature for younger readers or readers who are not necessarily younger, but not as have the prowess of reading the harder vocabulary. And in that, for example, there are tools publicly available, by the way. It's a plugin into your Google Docs. You can simply put in the text, click on it, and it would color the words with the different levels, and then you can choose to modify it or keep it the way it is. We're currently actually working with 160,000 words from text. You're going to say, why are they from 1955 and 65? Out of copyright. I don't have to worry about this issue of who owns the text in this case, and those are actually now all getting simplified. For example, again, I'll leave this here, but you may have text of this kind. The words in the red were considered to be a bit harder for readers. How do you simplify them when you go to a lower level and then to a third level of simplification? This is level 3 is about 6th grader, and level 4 is about 9th grader, and then level 5 is the original raw text, the intention of the writer. Barak is a new project that just started and is trying to push this so that we can work with younger levels, so 1st grader, 2nd grader, 3rd grader kind of level. And I'm getting the signal. I'm gonna quickly gender bias in languages that inflect for gender is real. Google actually is quite biased. 10 to 1 we found from numbers that we had. If you put examples like I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, the doctor is always a guy, the nurse is always a woman, and it just doesn't seem right. And in fact, even better, some examples like these, where dancers and nurses are women, and engineers, drivers, and thieves are all men. I put in the thieves just to remind you, it's not always good what the men get. I mean, it's thieves are men, doctors are men. Yeah, so bias is bad for both genders. In fact, I don't know why it stopped. No, it didn't finish. The machines. Sorry. Just do this. Okay, so. Last thing I'll just say about ChatGPT, I'm happy to answer questions about ChatGPT. Of course, this was created by OpenAI. Everybody knows about it. It has the same problems it has in English. It also has in Arabic, particularly things like hallucination or coming up. That's a technical term, by the way. Hallucination is what we call it. And but in Arabic, you also get some weird grammatical problems. So I asked it today to write a draft article about this festival, and it claimed that Orhan Pamuk and Haruki Murakami are actually attending, and that it starts tomorrow. I mean, okay, so hallucinate. But from the point of view of writing a structure, it's decent, right, to get you started. But the facts are on you, not on it. I'll leave this for the Arabic readers. I asked it about Awlad Haritna with Naguib Mahfouz, and it came up with like fantastic imagination of when and who and why anything happened there. Finally, some examples of errors in spelling that it still makes. And those are actually interesting. If you just learn from what I said earlier about chopping the words and mis-chopping the words can happen, it produces words like with this, for example, with 3 L's, because it doesn't know the rule about the 3 L's. And of course, doing Arab is just another level. This is like sentence analysis in Arabic. It's completely laughable. It looks like it's right, but clearly the person, this just doesn't mean anything. It's completely nonsensical. All right. I hope you learned something useful about AI, about Arabic, about the challenges, about some of the opportunities that are happening and the things that we're doing. There's a lot of people who are working in this area from the technology point of view, some actually Arabic speakers, some non-Arabic speakers, and we're always looking for collaborations with people who are in your areas. I mean, people who are publishers and writers who are looking for ways of using the technology to help them instead of being reactive and afraid of it, and we're happy to work with you and listen to ideas and see, we're looking for the inspiration. Hopefully this will help you also. And I will stop here. This is the QR code for those who want the slide. And on this, I want to thank the AV team, thank we don't have a translator here, I think, today, or do we? No, I don't, okay. And Emirates Airline, Dubai Culture, Emirates Research Foundation, Dubai Calendar, and Dubai Duty Free. Thank you all. If I have any time for questions, okay. About 5 to 10 minutes. Sorry it took long. All right. There's a question in the back. If you just wait a second, Bakr, yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
So over time, since more people are going to be using these tools, and then OpenAI will be taking that data from the net and it'll be training on its own data. So are there any risks where it becomes even more biased over time?
Yeah.
Same with Arabic translation, where you're parallelizing this data for that's outputted from your same model, and then you just keep reinforcing it?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So we're talking about the known problem of the feedback loop, where over time we know that the amount of data that's available on the web is more and more becoming machine generated rather than human generated. And you can say, for me, if it's machine generated and checked with a human or fixed by a human, I count it as human. I don't count that as machine generated. So we're talking about purely machine generated and just pushed out there. So indeed, this is a problem. It's a problem for all languages. In some cases, there are certain aspects of translation that I think the sense is the risk is worse than the benefit. For example, there's a lot of knowledge content that's available in English. So think of Wikipedia size in English compared to Arabic. A translation of all of Wikipedia English to Arabic has benefits. Now, it will introduce some grammar errors and some errors and maybe some factual errors depending on the model, but the sense is that we're actually getting more than we are actually risking. I mean, it's a trade-off to a degree. The fear is in the long term, when the amount of truly generated human content is more like 1% and 2%, I have no idea, I'm afraid. I hope this day wouldn't happen during my lifetime, but it probably will. So we'll have to see what happens by then. I love Toby Walsh, I think in a conversation, not yesterday, the day before, had kind of brought up an idea that I thought was really inspiring in a sense, which is maybe we will see the rebirth or the reinvigoration of traditional media now, because now people may want in the future authenticity. Like if everything in the world is noisy garbage, you cannot trust any of it. So where do you go for your trusted sources? Maybe this will be something that would flip a different page. I don't know. I mean, it seems inspiring possibly as a solution, but you're right. In essence, there is a big risk. I already saw in examples that I've had in different sets of slides I've given where there was horrible translations, like really, really bad translations that actually were X-rated language of things that are not at all X-rated language that were coming out just randomly. And I'm like, why would the system do this? And I searched for the weird expression, because it was a very unique, weird expression, not your typical X-rated expression. And I found it in websites that was, oh, this is a translation of a Psychology Today article from English to Arabic. And it was just there. It was, I mean, I can say privately, whoever is interested what the expression was, but it was very weird. And then over time, I kept checking Google Translate. Every time I give that talk in some variation, I go and I check, and at one point they cleaned it up. And so I took that example. I didn't bother to look for other examples. But it's already happening in a sense, you know, to some degree, yeah. I hope it inspires people to clean up their data before they post it. Yes, and then,
I do professional translation, political, for elite people.
Mm.
And I keep an eye of what's happening. The thing which amazes me now, I don't have the answer. There is a bulk, huge amount of movies and series, all translated very, very good.
yeah.
Even they're going back now to the 50s and 60s, you can find the translation. I really ask myself, is this artificial intelligence or people doing it?
If I had to make, I don't know the answer for the specific cases that you're talking about. I've seen what you're talking about, though. My sense is it's human quality. It's not machine translated. And my guess as a person in the field is basic things that tell me that that's the case, that the quality of speech recognition is still not as great as we want it to be. So you have errors of taking the speech, let's say, and the idea of having the original, scripts, scenario, we don't have most of them. I mean, they're gone, right? All we have is the movie with the speech. So the speech recognition is hard. A speech recognition from old movies with lower quality of the audio is harder. Translation of topics that are conversational is very hard because we don't have enough examples naturally of it. You can test the difference today, by the way. If you go to YouTube and you look at the closed captions, you can see if it's auto-generated or if it's actually human generated. So that could tell you where it came from. But we've actually looked at, in this project, we actually looked at the closed captions or the subtitles for the project about the gender bias. We took lots of data that already is public from English and Arabic, and we believe that it's all all human translation. I'll tell you also why I think it's human translation and not machine translation. It has a signature of errors that machines don't make. So machines don't make errors like putting two dots on a ha in hadihi. They just don't make that error. Or they don't drop the two dots of the ta marbuta. The feminine ending in Arabic has a special form for it. Humans make that mistake a lot. A human makes a lot of mistake of hemzas. The machine actually does not make that mistake for the simple reason that it's going probabilistically. It looks like what is the more common form of this word. And luckily, till now, the most common form of a word in Arabic, when you look, would actually be spelled correctly, just from historical perspective. So I can tell if a human produced it because it's bad, oddly. The badness of the human generation is different from the badness of the machine generation.
Well, they are doing a great job with this amount of translation. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, of course. Nahid.
Shukran, Doctor, for a very rich presentation. I'm an author for children's books, and I'm a publisher. And what worries me, would we receive stories that are AI generated? So would AI provide an option where we can put the text and it would tell us this is my production or not my production?
Yeah, a great
Thank
question. So this is something that is not puzzling publishers alone, but also a lot of academics and a lot of professionals for different reasons, but similar in principle. Professors want to know, did you write this essay or you didn't? And also companies want to know a way of, like OpenAI and these companies want to basically say, no, this is not yours. This is ours. You cannot sue us for infringing on your copyright. So everybody is interested in the question of ownership in this new age of doing this. There is actually there's research going on. I know at least 2 competitions this year happening in the computational linguistics field on the ability to predict if text is automatically generated or not. So people are working on this problem actively. OpenAI claimed, I think within few months when they produced their system, that they provided an API, a tool basically, that allows you to check if it is generated by them or not. And then wonderful grad students within a month showed that they can break it by simply doing things like adding a period or a comma or changing one word in one place or another. It's a fragile system. It's very hard to figure out how to actually do this because it's so good at imitating the human behavior, right? It's very hard to tell if it's human generated or not. From your point of view, I think the direction a lot of people are thinking of right now is, if you think of this as a tool that is helping you produce something, and then you shape it at the end the way you want, then you own the product that you've produced at the end, right? So if one of the authors coming to you and they say, here is something I wrote, and you can interrogate them, you can ask them, when did you think about this story? How did you develop it? What did you use, right? We have to assume some degree of honesty, I suppose, right? But that's kind of where we are. I mean, another argument I've heard was that the intelligence that's human in the process should not be underestimated, and it's in the prompt formulation. So the word prompt is a word, add to your vocabulary. It's the kind of question you ask the system. So when you talk to ChatGPT, you think often I'm asking it, technically you're kind of giving it a prompt, and it's kind of following based on the prompt to give you an essay of its opinion of whatever it is you're asking. So sometimes you ask, right? I mean, you look at authors, I believe, somebody say, oh, this author, I don't want to use the word stole, but it was inspired heavily by an idea from another author, but they wrote the story differently. Is that an infringement of copyright? Is there a copyright on the idea that's a seed idea, or is it the final product that actually wove a tapestry of beautiful language together and inspired somebody to read it? It's a vague space even for people, Nahid. I mean, it's not always clear. So you have to make your best judgment, develop the trust with the authors that you work with. And if it's a good story and AI helped create it and it fits the goals and policies of your company, why would you say no to it? If it serves your purposes.
Answer.
No, so
That this is
So
my
the short,
product or not.
the short answer is there are people are developing tools. There are already tools that do this.
But AI would not currently.
No.
Can I ask AI?
So
Is this story yours?
I don't
I don't know what to say.
Yeah. So
How
so
to
in,
reform the question?
in principle, knowing how the system is designed, it could give you an answer, but it may not be the answer that you want, or it may not be true. I mean, we just agreed it hallucinates. Why would it not hallucinate a positive or a negative answer? And this is also another piece I really want you to think about. This over-dependence on AI cuts both ways. One of the problems ethically for us is if, as a professor, let's say, I mean, I actually don't grade essays because I'm a computer scientist. We look at the programs more and the development of the system. But for my colleagues who are, let's say, in philosophy or history, who are, looking at these systems, there's always a fear of what if the system is wrong in thinking that this is artificial. And it's actually the student worked hard. Now you could say this will happen, one time versus 100 times, but the risk of actually hurting a student and making them feel like they are a criminal seems to me not worth it, to be honest, right? So the answer is don't trust it. So, yes star / no star, I don't know. Not now, yeah. Okay, one last question. I guess everybody is ready to go to lunch. Thank you all. I enjoyed talking with all of you. Have a wonderful rest of the festival.